Today we're going to learn about something called a noun clause. A noun clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb, and it functions just like a noun in a sentence. That means it can be the subject, the object, or even follow a preposition. Noun clauses are really useful when we want to talk about thoughts, questions, or things that people say. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to recognize them and use them in your own speaking and writing.
There are several important reasons why we use noun clauses in English. First, we use them after certain verbs and adjectives, especially when we're expressing opinions, feelings, or mental activities. Second, noun clauses help us include a question inside a sentence. So instead of asking directly, we can report or talk about the question. And finally, noun clauses are really common when we report what someone has said or asked. So, if you're telling a friend what your teacher said, or what your mother asked you, you're probably using a noun clause.
There are three main ways a noun clause can begin. The first is with a word that. This is probably the most common. The second is with the words whether or if, which we use when we're reporting yes/no questions. And the third type begins with question word, like where how, who, when, or why. Each of these has a slightly different use, and we'll go over examples of each one together.
Let's begin with noun clauses that start with a word that. These are very common. For example, look at the sentence. Gina knows that her food will taste good. In this sentence, that her food will taste good is the noun clause. It has a subject, her food, and a verb, will taste. This whole clause is acting as the object of the verb knows. So Gina knows something, and that something is the noun clause. That is how these work. They give more information, especially after verbs like know, think, or believe.
Some verbs are often followed by noun clauses. These verbs usually express thoughts, feelings, or mental processes. For example, we can say, I thought that you knew the answer, or do you feel that you're working too hard? In both of these, the part that begins with that is giving us more information about the action of the verb. Some other verbs that work like this include agree, believe, discover, forget, hope, realize, and show. When you use these verbs, you can often follow them with a noun clause to explain the idea more fully. Noun clauses can be in statements and questions, as in these two sentences. I thought that you knew the answer. This is a statement. Do you feel that you're working too hard? This is a question.
Noun clauses can also follow forms of the verb be when they are connected to certain adjectives. These are usually adjectives that express feelings, certainty, or opinions. For example, we might say, he was surprised that the door isn't locked. In this case, that the door isn't locked is the noun clause, and it explains what he was surprised about. Another example is, it is interesting that the door is open. Here, the adjective is interesting, and the noun clause explains what is interesting. These sentences follow the pattern, be plus, adjective plus that clause.
One important thing to remember is that in everyday conversation, we often leave out the word that in these kinds of sentences. For example, we can say, I believe that everyone should do his or her part, or we can just say, I believe everyone should do his or her part. Both are correct. Leaving out that makes the sentence a little more casual and more natural in speaking. Just make sure the sentence is still clear and easy to understand.
Now let's look at noun clauses that begin with whether or if. These usually come from yes/no questions. For example, someone might ask, do you know whether you will be free tomorrow? If I want to report that, I can say, I don't know whether I'll be free tomorrow, or I don't know if I'll be free tomorrow. Both are correct, and in many cases, whether and if mean the same thing. This type of noun clause is useful when you're not sure about something or when you're reporting a yes/no situation.
Sometimes when we use whether or if, we add the words or not to the end of the clause to show both possible outcomes. For example, we can say, I don't know whether the car was locked or not, or I don't know whether or not the car was locked. Both versions are fine. You can also say, I don't know if the car was locked or not. But be careful, this version is not correct. I don't know if or not the car was locked. Never split if and or not like that. It just doesn't work in English grammar.
The last kind of noun clause we're going to look at today is the type that begins with a question word. These include who, what, where, when, why, how, and so on. These are often used to include a WH question inside a statement. For example, maybe someone asks, where does Sudri live? If I want to talk about that question in a sentence, I could say, I'm not sure where Sudri lives. Notice that the word order changes. In the noun clause, we use statement word order, subject first, then verb. We don't keep the question order.
Let's look at another example. The question is, what time is it? If I want to include that question in a sentence, I could say, I don't know what time it is. That's a noun clause. We're still using the question word, what, but we're using it in a full sentence with regular statement order. What time it is, not what time is it. That's a very common mistake. So be careful. Always use subject verb word order when turning a question into a noun clause.
Okay, now that we've seen all three types of noun clauses, those that begin with that, those that begin with whether or if, and those that begin with question words, we're going to do a little practice.